Hello everyone. On the show today, I've got Professor Shahidul Islam, who has his PhD in biochemistry, and he is currently serving as an academic leader for biotechnology cluster, which is biochemistry, genetics, and microbiology at Westville campus at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. His major area of research and interest is type 2 diabetes and obesity, where he's published more than 180 papers. And in fact, Prof is considered one of the world's leading researchers on the topic of diabetes, the top 2% of global researchers according to Mandalay.com, in fact, and in the top 0.1% of global researchers in experimental diabetes research by Xpect.com. Prof's animal model development research is world leading and is widely regarded as one of the best and is used globally. He is also the World Journal of Diabetes editor-in-chief, and I can think of nobody better to unpack diabetes type 2, obesity, and sweeteners and sugar substitutes, natural sweeteners as well. So if you're diabetic, if you're obese or overweight, or if you know that know of somebody that is, this is an absolute must listen. Hugely beneficial and informative. I absolutely loved it. As always, like, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Prof. Shahidul Islam, thank you very much for being here. Absolute pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to having a fantastic conversation about all things health, obesity, diabetes, artificial sweeteners, and the like. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, Clinton, and thanks for having me as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. You've got quite a story. So you've been all over the show. First, prior to your career and your childhood, you grew up in Bangladesh. But give us some background as to where you started, your education, where that took you. Obviously, now you're in South Africa.
Okay, nice to share always. I try to share in many places, as you saw, my inaugural lecture maybe. Mm-hmm. I think basically I completed my BSc honors and MSc degree in biochemistry from the number one university in Bangladesh. It's called University of Dhaka. Dhaka is the capital city of Bangladesh. And once I completed, I joined in a hospital as a biochemist. And, my probation period was 1 year. But after 6 months, they promoted me. And they promoted me to lab in charge. But by this time, I got a scholarship from Japanese government to do my PhD in Japan. So I moved to Japan. I completed my PhD in the shortest period, like 3 years.
And is that the shortest possible period?
I think it was a given period for me. If I can't finish in 3 years, then I need to pay from my pocket from fourth year.
And how long does it normally take on average?
Normally 3 years.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
So also, meanwhile, I also went to Japanese language class, and I became the top in the class out of 35 international students in terms of writing, reading, speaking, and listening. Even I taught many Japanese students Japanese language here in Durban.
Really?
Yeah, so I think because I was the language contest winner as well.
Jeez, so, that's impressive.
Yeah, so when I go to Japan now to give a talk, I always speak in Japanese.
Fantastic.
Right. And my Japanese may be better than English, yeah.
Wow.
So I think then I came back to home and joined in a medical university to teach medical biochemistry for a few months. But there's only teaching. There's no research funding or no research facility, but I was fascinated for research. And that is why I tried some other countries. Then finally I got a fellowship from number one university again in South Korea. It's called Seoul National University, and where my diabetes research started in South Korea. And I moved to South Korea in July 2005, and that was for 1 year contract. Then I finished my contract. Then I joined in a company, it's a functional food company in South Korea. That was a permanent job, but I left after 3 months because I wanted to continue my research in the university, including teaching. I did not like that company job. It's simply looking like a routine work every day. Okay. So then I tried many places. Finally, I got offer from Northwest University in Potchefstroom. I think they're planning to do a diabetes project. And ultimately, one PhD student I need to supervise as well, who will be conducting the diabetes research. And initially, they offered me for 2 years contract, but I was taking time because to go to the internet, a lot of negative news about South Africa. And if you come here, safety is a big issue, this and that. So I was reading and delaying and delaying. And meanwhile, they increased my offer to 3 years. And then initially they wanted to make you only my return airfare to come here to South Africa. So when I was delaying, they increased my contract to 3 years, then also offered my whole family return airfare to come to South Africa. Still, I'm not motivated to come here because the safety issue. Then suddenly I found someone on the internet, is very familiar name to me, and he's an associate professor in the Wits University in Johannesburg. And I called him over telephone, and he told me, close your eyes and come here. I'm here since 1990s. There's nothing wrong here. And
that's good to hear.
Finally, I found he's also from Bangladesh and from my village.
What?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Then when he told me, and then I came straight by Singapore Airlines and landed in 31st of October 2006. So that's my journey to South Africa. Then I did my postdoc for 2 years in Northwest University, although the contract was for 3 years. Then meanwhile, trying for a job in many places. And in October 2008, I got 3 jobs in the same month, one after another. The first one in a Japanese medical university for 2 years contract as a postdoctoral researcher. And second one in the University of Manitoba in Canada for 1 year contract as a research associate for diabetes research. And the third one, I got this one, what I'm doing at the moment at the University of KwaZulu-Natal as a lecturer of biochemistry. And what I was looking for, and this job was fully permanent and full-time. So I was looking for something full-time because, the contract job, they give you lump sum salary, no other benefits. So, and also my son was 6 years at that time, he was adopted here. My wife also liked the weather and country, everything. So ultimately we decided not to go to Canada or Japan, so I stayed in South Africa. So I'm here now, 15 years.
And you haven't looked back?
Yes,
and here we are.
I think yesterday or day before yesterday morning, university sent me a letter that they're giving me 15 years long service award on 29th of November.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, in hindsight, a good decision, huh?
I think so. I'm never regret. I think I'm doing my dream job. My dream job was to doing teaching and research in the university, and that I got. So I think I'm more than satisfied.
You've got an affinity for research in diabetes in particular. An extremely accomplished researcher, and doing my homework and looking at the reach that you've put out there in terms of the studies extensively over time. You're really to be commended on your dedication to this particular field over a period of time. So well done, especially with a disease like diabetes, where it's increased exponentially over the last 20 years.
You're right, yeah.
Exponentially, along with obesity, and we'll chat about the links between those two later. But why diabetes? Why did you decide to go that route from a research perspective?
And if I tell you frankly, initially there was no reason to do work with diabetes because you know that when I was in Bangladesh teaching in a medical university, I was looking for fellowship to go overseas again to do research. But my supervisor in South Korea, like in Seoul National University, who developed a project on diabetes, and I had no choice. So I think I have to start with diabetes. And ultimately, it was so fascinating for me. I'm a diabetes researcher, globally now. So I think that the diabetes research I started over there, you'll be surprised to hear, although I did only 1 year work in Seoul National University, where I published 7 papers from that 1 year data.
Wow.
So those work helped me to get this job as well, because at that time I have only 14 papers, although I got more than 200 papers at the moment. And that way my diabetes research started, and that also helped me to get the postdoctoral fellowship here in South Africa, who developed a diabetes project, and they wanted to bring me here as a diabetes expert because I already gained experience. And they found me from my papers as well.
Fantastic. Very interesting.
Yeah.
For the listeners, can you define diabetes? Let's start at the beginning. What exactly is diabetes?
Diabetes is a normally called non-communicable chronic disease. That means it's not contagious. It will not go from one person to another. It is sometimes called also it is lifestyle-related disease. And if you can manage your lifestyle, you can manage diabetes better, or you may prevent diabetes. It will never come to you.
Okay.
So the lifestyle is the main problem, especially for type 2 diabetes. That's my main focus area of research. Type 1 is autoimmune disease. We got mainly two types. We also got another type is called gestational diabetes. The type 1 is autoimmune, if I explain to you, and we got our immune system in our body that prevent the infection from bacteria, virus, organisms, or micropathogens. So when our immune system become destructive to our pancreatic beta cells that produces insulin, and the insulin controls the blood glucose level. It's like a self-suicidal situation. For example, your security guard killing you.
Yes.
And our immune system become detrimental for pancreatic beta cell. So then pancreas cannot produce insulin. Ultimately, we cannot control blood glucose level. It goes up and up. So ultimately, we become diabetic.
Okay. And then in those patients, you would have to administer insulin manually.
Yeah. That is type 1, we also called insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus. And type 2 is mostly lifestyle related. For example, if you're not eating healthy, if you're not living healthy, that is very important. For example, if you don't know what you're eating, what is maybe healthy, what is not healthy, and like people are eating a lot of sweets, a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of fats, and they're interrelated to each other. Some people sometimes think, if I eat a lot of carbohydrate, I'm not eating a lot of carbohydrate, I'm eating a lot of fat, but still I'm getting diabetic. Why? So that I'll tell you how obesity is linked with the diabetes. The type 2 diabetes, what happens here, the two things happen. So we call it a heterogeneous disorder. The number one is insulin resistance. For example, when you take a lot of carbohydrates and carbohydrates converting to glucose, so when glucose level is going up, so your body is trying to bring the glucose level down. So if you have high blood glucose level, so our body needs to produce high amount of insulin. And when your pancreas or pancreatic tissue needs to produce a lot of insulin, they become exhausted. And because they can't manage it, something like that. So they produce a lot of insulin, but ultimately some of this insulin or many of this insulin become resistance.
Yes.
Because although we are producing insulin, we don't have sufficient receptor on the cell surface. So I want to just explain to you how it works.
Yes, please.
And insulin, after producing from the pancreatic beta cell, they don't work over there. They go to the cell surface. They bind with the cell surface receptor, and once they bind with the cell surface receptor, that binding send a signal by many other mechanisms we got inside of the cell. It's called cell signaling process. Then final signal goes to a glucose transporter. This is another channel on the cell membrane. So when insulin binds to the receptor, that signal sent finally to the glucose transporter. The glucose transporter opens the channel, then glucose comes inside of the cell. Without the permission of insulin, glucose cannot go inside of the cell.
Okay. So almost like a lock and key.
Yes, yes. And now, if you have a lot of insulin, but you don't have sufficient number of receptor, so you cannot open the channel.
Okay.
Because the insulin cannot bind to the receptor, receptors are not sufficient. So ultimately, glucose cannot go inside of the cells, and ultimately they cannot produce energy, because energy normally produced after metabolism. Once glucose go inside of the cell, and they go via many processes. It's called glycolytic pathway, TCA cycle. Then they produce energy, and we get that energy in the form of heat. Our body temperature is always constant.
Yes.
So how we maintain it? Our body produces energy in the form of heat. So that is why this one problem is called insulin resistance, that we got insulin, but insulin cannot work because of the lack of receptor. So second one, because of the high glucose level in the blood all the times when someone become diabetic or slowly become diabetic from pre-diabetes to diabetes. So what happens, those high glucose become toxic for the body. Although we need glucose, but too much glucose is toxic. So they produce, they help to produce a lot of free radicals, and those free radicals damage the pancreatic beta cells, or insulin-producing beta cells. Ultimately, we are getting insulin resistance one side, and other side we are getting the beta cell damage. So slowly, our pancreas getting dysfunction.
Okay.
So we can't produce the sufficient amount of insulin like we could do before. So this way, the type 2 diabetes starts to grow slowly, and it becomes bad to worse as time goes.
So when there's a lack of receptors, does that mean that then there'd be a lot of insulin left in the bloodstream?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's hyperinsulinemia?
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, that is called hyperinsulinemia. But what happens maybe when someone become type 2 diabetic, initially they will be hyperglycemic and hyperinsulinemic, but later as time goes, that insulin will slowly come down. Because you know why? Because the damage of the pancreatic beta cell, it cannot produce sufficient amount of insulin.
Okay.
Slowly. So that is why, although it is initially high, but as time goes, that level will come down to even below normal.
Okay. So when initially high, would that be, at what stage is that? Is that during the pre-diabetic stage? Is that somebody with full-blown type 2 diabetes?
It's more likely pre-diabetic or initial stage of diabetes, even after diagnosis. The first phase of diabetes, they got hyperinsulinemia and hyperglycemia. But as time goes, like 5 years, 10 years time, you'll see the insulin level is coming even below normal.
Okay, so this is over a period of time, 5 to 10 years, obviously individual depending.
Yeah.
The question that I want to ask, for me, being in fitness, training, seeing people, I've got diabetic patients, numerous diabetic patients, numerous overweight patients as well. Is type 2 diabetes reversible?
Yes, if you can detect it early, for example, at pre-diabetes level, and if someone do physical exercise and eat healthy and to do regular, the physical exercise must be regular. You can't say, I'm doing Saturday whole day exercise, and next 6 days I'm doing nothing. So that will not work, because the regularity is very important for physical activity. So minimum 3 days are best if somebody can do for 5 days, 45 minutes, or 3 days, 1 hour. So, and in alternate days to maintain the regularity. So that is very important. And if somebody walking, maybe minimum walking for 1 hour, and this brisk walking, not like slow walking. And if somebody running, minimum 15 minutes, vigorous running can also help. They can get similar benefit, from physical exercise.
Weight training as well?
Weight training is fine, but I think you know better than me in terms of training, and if they got sufficient muscle strength or maybe bone health, is because normally what happens at type 2 diabetes normally comes, like after 40 years age, most of the time, because we also got age-related disease. But nowadays, we also see type 2 diabetes in many growing children because of the overweight and obesity. So that is not only in South Africa, in many other countries. And recent data says that many children also become type 2 diabetic and insulin resistance pre-diabetic. And after 50 years, our bone strength normally goes down for both male and female, but females are more vulnerable than male because of the menopause and many other issues. So if somebody fit in terms of muscle and bone, I think they can do weightlifting or weight training is fine.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the potential link between being overweight, diabetes type 2, exercise, and now diet. So tell me, what is it important, what should people focus on from a dietary perspective to, one, manage their weight, and two, if they are looking to reverse a pre-diabetic condition?
I think many things, and even during my recent US talk, I also told in the University of Kentucky, they also got a children diabetes center over there. If I tell you what we don't follow in our daily life, we eat, like it's a breakfast time, we have to eat breakfast. It's a lunch time, we have to eat lunch. And dinner time, we have to eat dinner. That should not be, because when you take the petrol in your car, when it's empty,
Yes.
or when you need petrol, but if you're not feeling hungry, why you should eat? That is the big question. The many people, they don't understand it. They think I should take breakfast because it's breakfast time. And that is one thing, that we don't follow the rules of eating. We need to only eat when you are hungry. And when you are eating, when you are not hungry, then we are depositing those calories. And we are getting overweight and ultimately obese, and insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, many other complications later. So that is one problem people need to understand, and how much they need to eat as well. We need to eat based on the number of cells in our body. But if you want to lose weight, so you need to eat less. So if you simply just maybe reduce 1/3 intake of your normal diet every day, for example, maybe you're taking 3 slices of bread, you're taking 2, you will lose weight. That's simple. And you just divide your food to 3 quarters, or maybe divide to 3, and take only 2 parts of it, and you will definitely lose weight. So that's simple. And also what we are eating. Eating too much carbohydrate will gain weight quickly. So you need to keep your food balanced. For example, if you eat, sometimes people think, some people eating a lot of fat, they're not gaining weight. Why I'm doing? So that is another story. Maybe you need to give me another hour to talk about the mystery of the fat cells. How it works, why some people eating a lot not gaining weight, but other people are doing. So
I'd love to talk. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes.
Because that's very interesting.
Why most of the people, most of the human beings, they got elastic fat cells.
Elastic fat cells.
Yes.
Okay.
The fat cell size, fat cell, how it grows, we call adipose cells, adipose
Yes.
tissue. And normally what happens, most of the people, they got elastic fat cell. For example, if you're eating too much diet or food, or even carbohydrate or lipid or fat, so your fat cell size will grow. It becomes big. A number of fat cells will increase. So those people gain weight quickly. And most of the people, they got that kind of fat cell. And those people, they got non-elastic fat cell. The fat cell size is fixed. Even if you're eating a lot of fat, you're not gaining weight because the fat cannot get inside of those fat cells because of the fixed size. So some people ask me during the lecture, then what happens to their fat? They simply go to the toilet. That's simple. Because they cannot absorb because there's no capacity to absorb.
How do you figure that out? Does somebody test for that?
Yeah, you see the many people, it's the thin people, if you give them fat, they're eating, but they're not getting weight. But check the fat level in their stool. You'll see this, most of the fat they're defecating, not absorbing.
Okay, so it would be done through a stool sample.
Yeah, sample test. It's simple.
Okay. So can a person change the amount of fat cells that they've got?
Yes. Especially those who have got elastic fat cells. For example,
Okay.
and how we lose weight and how we gain weight. If I explain that to you, I told you already the 2 ways we gain weight. The number 1, we increase the size of the fat cell, and I also increase the number of the fat cell.
Okay.
Right, so the 2 way we gain weight, and also we got 2 types of adipose tissue. One we call brown adipose tissue, and another is called white adipose tissue. The brown adipose tissue, normally they produce more energy compared to the white adipose tissue. If you can convert your white adipose tissue to brown adipose tissue, then you will feel more energetic, but your fat level will also goes down. So so this way you can also lose weight because when you're brown adipose, because the white adipose tissue are more fluffy, and they take a lot of space and make you bulky.
Okay.
So compared to your brown adipose tissue, those are they produce more energy. So I think we are running a project now. We're also trying to look at some, natural products like, as you see, the sea algae project we are running. And one of the main objectives to see whether they can convert like a white adipose tissue to brown adipose tissue or not.
Okay.
So you're looking at that at the moment.
Can you elaborate on that particular study? So can you outline what it was for the listeners?
I think this is a bilateral study we are doing, supported by the National Research Foundation and the Indian government. It's a bilateral project. We collected, it's still collecting because we collected sea algae from all over South African coastline, and more than 50 samples we collected, 50 different types from different regions. And we did the extraction, then we analyzed for anti-diabetic and anti-obesity test. And we found some of them are fantastic result and better than existing medicine.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I think those samples we screened already. Now we want to go to those places to collect additional samples. And we took permit from the government for that as well, to collect samples from all over the country. So then we will do animal trials next year. So after animal trials, we'll also continue to human trials before we maybe develop supplement or medicine.
Okay.
So that is ultimate goal, to develop medicine.
A lot of my research on you and the research that you've done seems to be done mostly on animal trials, rats.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain that to me, why that? And then my follow-up question to that would be, how does that translate and carry over then into human trials?
Okay. So I think why animals? That is your question.
Yes.
So it's very simple because most of the time we can't use humans for research for ethical reasons. Like if we use animal as a model, and then we can collect any samples. We can collect brain sample, liver sample, kidney sample, and pancreas or anything, whatever we want to collect. But for human, it's not possible. And also, if I maybe ask someone, I want to induce diabetes in your body, nobody will be interested. So that's simple. So that is why, for many reasons, the animal model, if I tell you 85% of the biomedical research, they use animal model. Only 15% they use the human model.
Okay.
And also the human model got a lot of limitations. You can collect blood or maybe some tissue samples, biopsy, that kind of things, but you can't collect the whole organ. You can't analyze the whole body. Even sometimes we can analyze the whole body of the rats. What happened after supplying this food for 1 month or 2 months? This way, that is why the animal models are very popular.
Okay.
And we also develop animal model ourselves. That is our number one or top research on my research profile. If you see in the Google Scholar, so we develop animal model for type 2 diabetes and obesity, and our model being used by all over the world everywhere in many countries.
Well done. That's amazing.
So I think that is why animal model development is our top-sided research. If you go to my Google Scholar profile, you will see our top-sided research on animal models.
Okay. And then the carryover from there, so what happens? You conduct a study on, in this case, rats. You get a promising result, something worth investigating further, and then what happens after that to the point where it then becomes human trials and then something that we might end up buying over the counter?
Since I'm not a medical person, so I think since we don't have access to humans, so what I do for clinical trials, we collaborate with some people, those who work with humans. So I got collaborated in many other countries, like in Switzerland. We collaborate with the St. Clair Hospital in Basel. So they do the human trials for us. And even we published paper together. I visited them for 1 month, and they invited me to go there to work together, because normally the protocols they're using and whatever we are doing on animals, they're using our same protocols on humans. So this way, we want to translate our animal research to human research. So I think normally we collaborate with other people, other countries in terms of clinical trials.
Okay, understood. Going back to diet, what should a person eat? Number one. What should they avoid? Number two.
Okay. Sometimes I use some, colorful language. For example, if I say, and if people would like to eat healthy, they need to look everything brown. And they need to avoid everything white. That's simple. You should avoid white rice, white bread, and because they got high glycemic index, if you don't want to be diabetic or obese or overweight in future. So you should take the brown rice, brown bread, so that is in terms of carbohydrates. And also I think the best to do if somebody can manage, so I think the best things to eat the complex carbohydrate. Whatever the carbohydrate we eat everyday life, like rice or potatoes or pasta or whatever it is. So these are maybe carbohydrate that is not complex like your vegetables. If you eat salad or vegetables in raw or cooked, raw is better than cooked if you can eat. Like salad is better than cooked vegetables.
Yes.
So I think if we can eat white meat, but in terms of meat, you need to think two color like white and red. You always need to choose white meat, like chicken, mainly chicken, if you say. Most other meats are red. If you look at the beef or mutton or even turkey is white, but chicken is also white. And in terms of protein, I think I'll tell you fish and white meat, not red meat. Some people say no, red meats are more tasty. I'm sure because of the high amount of saturated fatty acid over there. And those saturated fatty acid causing insulin resistance. And they're producing some macrophages like your inflammatory biomarkers. They also, play a role in terms of inducing inflammation on pancreatic beta cells and in our body. So the many things happen inside our body we don't know.
Yes.
So I think in terms of carbohydrate, as I said, you need to look at brown. If you talk in terms of protein, you need to go for white. And lipid. And if you talk about the lipid, it's very simple. I'll take for the general public, they'll understand easily. if you see any lipid or fat, the liquid at room temperature, they are good for health.
Okay.
And if they're solid or semi-solid at room temperature, they're not good for health. That's simple.
Okay, so rule of thumb, if it's liquid at room temperature, green light.
Yeah, that's true. Like a simple example, like sunflower oil. And that is the liquid at room temperature. If you look at the canola oil or olive oil, whatever you see, the liquid at room temperature. And if you see the butter, margarine, and all those things, they're not liquid at room temperature. They're also lipid.
Okay.
But then, so if we don't, and cheese and that kind of things, we need to understand how it works. And why? Because those are solid at room temperature. You need high temperature to melt them down.
Okay.
And that is why, when they go inside of our body, and when they deposit it inside of the body, it's very difficult to mobilize them. That is why the people, they cannot lose weight, because it's difficult to mobilize fat if they're consuming red meat or consuming saturated fat like solid fat most of the days.
Okay. That makes sense. But so then there's some people prescribe a high fat, low carb diet to combat things like diabetes and to promote weight loss. So what would you say to that school of thought?
I think that I'll not say is a bad idea, but you need to also understand high fat diet, low carb diet, you can eat. Why the people prescribe that? Because if I tell you simply, the 1 gram of fat contains 9 kilocalorie energy. And on the carbohydrate and protein got 1 gram 4 kilocalorie energy, plus minus.
Yeah.
So now, if you take a small amount of fat, you get a lot of calories from there. So your stomach will stay full for a long time. But like some people ask to eat eggs like that. So maybe don't eat carbohydrate, eat eggs, and that will keep your stomach full for a long time. And if you can keep yourself full for a long time, you will not feel hungry to eat a lot. So this mechanism they use for high fat, low carb diet.
Okay.
Right, so that is why.
And I've noticed as well that generally coincides with a similar school of thought, which is then intermittent fasting. So there's a particular guy that I follow. I've seen a lot of his progression. He's an endocrinologist, Dr. Jason Fung. Are you familiar with him?
I think so, yes.
And he promotes intermittent fasting big time. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think intermittent fasting is good, but I also forgot to tell you something. I will tell you now because you reminded me. So that is also the eating habits. I think how we need to maintain our eating habits. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can't escape some invitation. Maybe you need to go for a wedding, you're eating a big meal. You're going to the restaurant, maybe you're ending dinner or something, you're eating a big meal. So we may do it every week or something sometimes. It happens, sometimes even more than once in a week. So whenever someone eating too much in a particular meal, they need to skip the following meal. That will be something looking like you're intermittent fasting. And sometimes I myself skip 2 meals because I only eat when I'm hungry. And if I had a big meals yesterday or last night, and I'm not feeling hungry during breakfast, I'll skip it. And I'm not feeling hungry during lunchtime, I'll skip it. So you will feel, but even if you feel hungry, I think if you had a big meal last night, I think it's mandatory, it's better to, but it's also, we need to know your physiological condition. If you're highly diabetic, you may be hypoglycemic if you're not eating. So I think normal person, if they're eating a big meal and next meal, I think it's recommended to skip for calorie balance or energy balance. Otherwise, those extra calorie depositing inside of your body. And as you know, after a certain age, people cannot grow by height. They can only grow left and right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the reality.
They can only grow left and right.
Yeah.
I like that. Another stance that Jason Fung takes is the theory of the body set weight. So that it's basically all is around homeostasis. So the body has a set built-in weight that is going to maintain, for easy maths, let's say 100 kg male, and one goes into a calorie deficit in an attempt to lose weight. But then what happens is invariably everything else, your metabolic processes then will downregulate to then burn less calories to bring you back up to 100 kgs. Is that something that you think has got legs, that theory? Does that?
I think if somebody do calorie restriction, and it's true, as I told you at the beginning, when our body works in a way like we call glucose-induced insulin secretion. And for example, if your glucose level is going up, insulin is also going up. If you're not eating the high glucose food, then your insulin is not going up. So although I said some people trying to do some mechanism like eating high fat, low carbohydrate diet, and if they continue to do it, what will be happen? Our pancreas will become lazy because you are not eating high carbohydrate diet. So pancreas, it does not need to produce a lot of insulin. So when somebody gets salary without working, what happens to them? They normally become lazy. I'm getting money without working, so why I should work?
Yes.
So our body is also quite similar. For example, when you're continuously eating the low carbohydrate diet, our pancreas become lazy. It does not produce a lot of insulin later. So that is why balanced diet is very important, but the amount of meal size is very important. If we can't control it, we can never control our body weight. So size of your meal is very important, how much you're eating.
Okay.
And you also need to know how much do you need. So how we need our food. For example, if I tell you, our body got millions of cells or billions of cells, and every single cell needs energy. And now, if we got a lot of cells, we'll need definitely high calorie or high amount of energy. And if we got less cells, we need less energy. And now, if we are eating more than the requirement, they're not being utilized. They're depositing. And we are not only depositing, because we are depositing in the form of fat cells, so we are increasing the number of cells. When you're increasing the number of cells, at the same time, we're increasing the demand of food. With those additional cells you're creating, they will ask for food. If you got 10 babies and 2 babies, your food requirement will be different.
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah. So that if you want to lose weight, even if your requirement is high, you need to eat less. Then what will be happen? Some of the cell will die, or fat cell will mobilize, or break down and produce energy, because for your survival.
So then what? So you're in a calorie deficit, then the body will then start to use the fat cells as energy for.
Okay.
How does it work?
Yeah. Let me tell you the real scenario how it works.
Okay.
And if somebody is starving, they don't take calorie from the fat deposit at the first point.
Okay.
We got 3 different types of deposits of energy in our body. Number 1 is carbohydrate or glucose. They deposit in the form of glycogen in the liver and muscles, mostly in the liver and rest in the muscle. And the second one is your fat, as you said, the adipose tissue or adipocyte. The third one is our muscle or protein. And now, if somebody is starving or started to starve, and when the stomach is empty, there's no food left over there, now they need to go to the deposit. That deposit, first deposit, they'll target the liver. That is your glycogen. So they'll break down the glycogen, but it will not go to the, below the low threshold. There's a threshold. Like, simply, if you got a lot of money in a bank and bank got a low level, you can't take this amount. It should be there all the times. So our body's also got similar systems, so it will not go up to that level. Once your glycogen is depleted, then it will target the fat.
That makes sense.
When the fat is depleting up to a certain level, then you are not eating. For example, somebody is starving for day after day, like in the malnourished or malnourished children. In some countries it happens. So then it is going to your protein or muscle. Then your muscle wasting. And those people, then you'll see their muscles are hanging because the proteins are depleting now. So this way the metabolism sequence is carbohydrate, lipid to protein.
Okay.
So this way they deplete, they use the deposit energy.
All right. I've got some clients over 100 kgs, 110 kgs plus. And they swear blue murder that they're in a significant calorie deficit day to day. Yet the number on the scale stays the same.
Yeah.
Is that possible? Is it possible to be in a calorie deficit but not lose weight?
It's possible. And why it is possible, let me tell you. So normally we call it, we got many glands in our body. We got a course called, steroid hormones, what IT is also educated in. And just finished that course recently. And we got a steroid hormone. The steroid hormone normally synthesized from cholesterol. So, right. And now, is called hyperthyroidism, and hypothyroidism is some kind of disease. So if somebody got problem with the thyroid gland, so if they're not producing sufficient amount of thyroid hormone, they lose weight without any reason. And if they're producing too much thyroid hormone, so they increase weight for no reason, because that hormone stimulates the weight gain. So that happens in an internal mechanism, because sometimes some people say, you will hear, the less fat in your diet, more fat in your body. You'll hear these kind of things.
Yeah.
Because our body needs lipid of steroid hormones or lipid containing things. And if we are not eating from diet, still our body needs it. So what happens in that time? They produce it internally.
Okay.
So that is why if somebody got hormonal problems, so they may have this kind of problem, what you said.
All right.
So then they need to look at the hormone profile.
Okay. So if somebody is in a calorie deficit, they can prove it consistently. They've followed a meal plan to the T. They've weighed their food. They're accurate on their portion control. And yet they still, over a period of time, have not shown a difference in a drop in their weight. They need to go and take a look at what is happening on a hormonal level.
Yes. Especially for thyroid hormones.
Especially for thyroid hormones. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What is the link between insulin and obesity?
Insulin and obesity, so simply as you see, as I told you, when someone slowly become overweight, and obesity does not happen overnight. That's the number one. And how it is happening maybe is for the long period of time, you're overeating, long period of time. And slowly you're putting a layer over there. And the fat layer is you're depositing additional fat, and your body is becoming initially overweight, then obese. And some people even get morbidly obese. We call it super obese. So that happens. So when our fat cell deposit increases in our body, they also compromise our metabolic process. How they produce some inflammatory biomarkers, I told you, is macrophages. And these macrophages cause a lot of problems, like they damage some cells, and like one of them is pancreatic beta cells. Like from pancreas we produce insulin. And also another hormone is called glucagon. The glucagon and insulin is two opposite type of hormone. Like insulin, they try to control or reduce the blood glucose, when the glucagon try to increase the blood glucose when you are not eating for a long time. Because after a certain time your glucose level will go down. So that time the glucagon secretion increases. So then it break down the glycogen, bring the glucose to the bloodstream. So this way try to maintain the glucose level in a certain level in your blood all the times if you are healthy.
So everything around homeostasis, trying to keep the same.
Yes.
Okay.
So that happens between insulin and glucagon. But when you're eating, becoming overweight and obese, ultimately you're producing a lot of inflammatory biomarkers, like I told you, the macrophages. And not only that, so also we are producing a lot of free radicals. It's called oxygen free radicals and nitrogen free radicals, hydrogen free radicals. So we are producing free radicals. Those free radicals are also damaging cells. I'll tell you another interesting thing just now. So what happens, our pancreas is one of the organs that got lowest defense system in our body compared to any other organs.
Lowest defense system.
Yes.
So it's most susceptible to attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're attacked by those free radicals.
Okay.
If you look at then out of those free radicals, because we published many papers on this area, antioxidant and free radical research. So if you look at over there, out of those free radicals, we got many different types of free radicals. Those were damaging the cells, and ultimately they're damaging the tissue. The tissue is just a combination of millions of cells. So now, out of those free radicals, one free radical is more dangerous than others, like hydroxyl free radicals. And now, since our pancreas got lowest defense system, they get, affected quickly compared to other organs. So if you are not eating sufficient amount of antioxidant, like if someone likes Coke but not tea, so they will be more vulnerable. The Coke does not have any antioxidant except maybe if they have caffeine. And tea got multiple different types of antioxidant over there. So that can prevent your oxidation in your body. So this kind of things we need to understand. Those, and let me go back to the obesity, how it causes the problem with the insulin or maybe diabetes. Simply, when the macrophage produces, they also damage the pancreatic beta cells and ultimately reduce the insulin secreting power. So when you secrete less insulin, ultimately we can't control our blood glucose.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I want to go back to two things. You've done some research on sweeteners, artificial sweeteners.
All
kinds of sweeteners.
Yes.
So natural, artificial, it's a buzzword at the moment.
Yes.
So diet sodas, Coke Zeros, all these 0-calorie sweeteners, and then obviously, like you've mentioned, your natural sweeteners. What's the deal there? What should people avoid at all costs with these sweeteners? Which ones, and which ones should they go to for their health?
I think it's a controversial matter in all over the world. There's the sweetener producing company. There many times they're debating with the scientists, and because business matters there. So what I'll tell you, what our study we did, that also debated by some other scientists when they submitted our paper. They're telling the amount you use normally is not consumed by human beings, that amount. So I think we did a lot of study in the last few years on sweeteners. And let me tell you from the beginning, normally the sugar is the widely used sweeteners in the world. Most of the people, they use sugar because it's cheap. And you can get a lot of sweeteners for cheap cost. But nowadays, and see, the sugar is responsible for causing obesity, overweight, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, many other complications. So people, they don't want to eat sugar. They're looking for those alternatives. So there are two different alternatives. Some we got natural sweeteners, like sugar alcohols. We got, I think this high fructose corn syrup. I saw in North America they use a lot. If you sit in the restaurant, you will see they're not giving you sweetener, they're giving you corn syrup. So there is high fructose corn syrup is also dangerous because it causes insulin resistance. And I'll tell you maybe a little bit later how fructose is dangerous for diabetic, or those who are not even diabetic. They will be diabetic. Because we use fructose to develop animal model of diabetes.
So you use fructose to make the animals diabetic?
Yes. So that is our model.
And that's what people are consuming in America, left, right, and center?
Yes. That happens.
It's no secret that their diabetes is through the roof.
In local shops I saw here in South Africa, even they're selling the fructose as a sweetener. So if you don't believe, if you go to some local pharmacies and shops, you will find it. They're selling fructose as a sweetener. That is a insulin resistance causing material. And I got a lot of information from Switzerland, and they do a lot of sweetener research as well. But let me go back to the original talk. So these artificial sweeteners are 0 calorie most of the time. There's no calorie, but the sweetness level for different sweeteners are different. Some of them may be 200 times sweeter, and one got 13,000 times sweeter than sucrose.
Sucrose being sugar
sucrose
for the
being sugar,
layperson.
Yes,
cool.
Yes. And some of them 13,000 times sweeter. And others in between 200 to 13,000. Some of them 600 times sweeter. So, and they are 0 calorie. And then why they're 0 calorie? Because normally they don't metabolize in our body.
Okay.
That's simple.
Okay.
And that is why they're not giving any calorific value to our body.
Okay.
So you're eating, and there's some of them, the one I think they give calorie, but in a different metabolic process, not by giving straight to the it's a different metabolic process. But most of them, they have no calorie. Now, recently we did a study with all these sweeteners, but many times I saw what people do, other scientists, they normally use the pure compound. Like, for example, you got different type of sweetener, aspartame, sucralose, ACEK or exosulfame K. Right, we got cyclamate, we got saccharin. So this kind of sweetener, mainly 5 we use. So many times scientists, they use the pure one. But our intention was to see, but people are not eating the pure one. They're eating what is available in the market. So we wanted to use one available in the market to see, because many other additives over there, they add many other things to make it maybe 5 gram or something like that. So we use that commercial one. And so far our study in terms of diabetes and obesity, in terms of artificial sweeteners, from our study we found the sucralose was the best.
Okay.
Compared to others. In terms of for diabetic people, if they want to consume artificial sweetener. But if we talk about the other side, the natural sugar alternatives like sugar alcohols, we got xylitol, erythritol, and stevia, and we found fantastic result for xylitol and stevia as well.
Really?
Yes. And xylitol, I think we are one of the top researchers in the world in terms of xylitol research, if you just search on the Google or anywhere. So, and even we publish book chapter, not only papers with xylitol. And we compare our study between xylitol and erythritol. And in most of our research, we found xylitol is the best.
Okay.
Compared to erythritol. But stevia is in terms of natural, but stevia is also natural. It's coming from plant leaves.
Yes.
That. So it's also, it's the best, better than your artificial sweetener.
So when you compare the artificial sweeteners to your natural sweeteners, what exactly are you comparing? Are you monitoring the subject or the animal's blood sugar markers? What makes it better?
Okay. We look at many biomarkers. For example, we look at anti-diabetic biomarkers, like we also look at the oxidative stress and antioxidant capacity or power of the sweeteners. I think we look at many things before we make a conclusion. So I think the good things, you just gave me an idea to do research in future, because we never tried that way, but maybe we'll start next year. Because previously we only compare between natural sugar alternatives and artificial sugar alternatives, artificial sweeteners.
Okay.
But we never compared between those alternatives in between, like your natural sugar substitute and artificial sugar substitute. So I think that will be interesting to see exactly which one is more powerful or which one is better.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe after you finish that study, you can come back and you can
Yes.
tell me. We can do another episode on
Sure.
it.
For now, I think for natural, you see, we did a study with xylitol, erythritol, and stevia. I think stevia and xylitol both are good. But when you compare the stevia with other artificial sweetener, we found the stevia was the superior. But if you eliminate the stevia, only talk about the chemical originated artificial sweetener, sucralose is the best.
Okay. What's an example of sucralose in the market?
I think I can't remember because
like Canderol, like there's the Canderol sweeteners.
if you talk about the stevia, it's called Canderol Green.
Okay, so stevia is Canderol Green.
Canderol Green, but
Okay.
many other company may be making different name.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to publicize a particular company.
Yes,
But
fair enough.
I think sucralose you can just read, and sometimes what they do, they also mix the different sweeteners together. So you don't know how much they're putting sucralose, how much they're putting aspartame.
Yeah.
And from our study, what we also found, we found the aspartame was the worst.
What's the worst?
Yeah, not in terms of everything, but most of the things.
Okay. Talk to me on that, off the back of that, with your zero sugar drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually zero sugar? Like if you compare Coke Zero, or let's not use a brand, zero sugar drinks to their normal alternative, is it actually that much more beneficial to drink the zero sugar?
I think I'll tell you yes. Why I'll tell you yes, for example, but it also depends which one you are taking.
Okay.
Right, you need to look at the fine prints, by using magnifying glass. Maybe they normally write is very small.
Yeah.
So I think I'll tell you yes. Why? Because if somebody take sugar-containing drinks, so they're consuming a lot of easy calorie from there, and those calories sometimes they think, I'm taking sugar, I'm not taking fat, so why I'm getting fat? Why I'm gaining weight? It's simple. In our body, your carbohydrate can be converted to fat. We got a simple mechanism. So how the lipid synthesis happens? The carbohydrate can be converted to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA can be converted to malonyl-CoA. Then they can synthesize the fatty acid. And fatty acid can bind to the glycerol. They make triglyceride. That is the 95% of our fat in our body is triglyceride. The reason why, because we take 95% triglyceride from the diet. So that's simple. But sometimes some people think, I'm eating more carbohydrate, I'm not eating fat, but why my body weight is gaining, I'm getting more bulky. The simple reason, because carbohydrate, the additional or extra carbohydrate, what you cannot metabolize, can be converted to fat.
Okay.
That's simple.
I read an interesting study on metabolic syndrome and an intervention of improving your gut microbiomes and how that would improve metabolic syndrome. Speak to me about microbiomes and gut health and how people can use that to their advantage, because that's something that doesn't get spoken about a lot. It's calories, it's sugar, but what's happening with the bacteria in our gut, it's often overlooked.
I think we did not do a lot of study on this because I'm not a microbiologist, I'm a biochemist, but what I can tell you, mainly we got two different types of microorganisms in our gut. Some of them are detrimental and some of them are beneficial. Right? They always try to keep a balance. So if you can maintain the balance in a way, it's called, I will tell you, positive balance. Positive balance means if you got beneficial bacteria, high amount compared to the detrimental bacteria.
Okay.
So then your gut health will be better. So how we can maybe maintain it by eating probiotics or prebiotics. Probiotics like yogurt. And some people, when they eat yogurt, they like the flavored one. I want mango, this and. But I think the best way to go for the plain yogurt.
Yes.
So if you take plain yogurt in daily basis, but also you need to think about the calorie content and all those things, and how much sugar they put it already over there, and whether it's sugar free or not, and low fat or not. So those factors but you can easily buy low fat plain yogurt. So you can eat a small amount every day, that your gut health will be fine.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's a microbial organism in our gut. They contribute to the energy metabolism.
Okay. That's interesting that you bring up low fat. There's two schools of thought with this. High fat, full cream, that goes back to your high fat diet. And the argument is that if you're removing the fat's what contains the flavor. That's what gives the full cream milk its flavor, for example. You have your fat-free milk. To get it to taste as similar as possible to the original, you have to replace that with something artificial. How do you feel about your low-fat variations, your fat-free variations of food?
I think if somebody want to eat, you're right, the flavor of the food is coming from the fat at the end of the day. So I think I will not tell someone to eat fat-free, rather they can go for low-fat. It's still the flavor is not that bad compared to full cream milk.
Okay.
So I think that way you will see, if you see the label on the food, you'll see the fat percent, normally if it is more than 3.5% or something, so they call it full cream or high fat.
Yeah.
So if it is like about 1.5 or something, they call it low fat. So I think there's no reason to, because fat we need in our body. I told you already, all of our steroid hormones are synthesizing from cholesterol. And if you're not eating fat, how can you synthesize those steroid hormones? And hormones we need. And many people sometimes they try to control their food or diet fat-free, something like that. They don't want to eat fat. That is also another bad conception. We have to eat balanced diet. The balanced diet means you have to have all kinds of food in optimum amount. You can't avoid a particular food completely if you don't have any sickness. If you have a particular type of sickness, for example, proteinuria, or you're losing albumin or protein with your urine, so then you need to do the protein restriction. So that is a different thing. But if you are healthy, if you want to keep yourself healthy, I don't think you need to eat a particular amount of food, high amount, but you just follow we need more carbohydrate basically compared to protein and fat.
Okay.
So we have to, but look at our diet. If we eat maybe sandwiches, what we eat, 2 slices of bread, so it's full carbohydrate. So we eat with butter over there. How much butter you put? You don't put the same amount of butter. So it's automatically you see our requirement for lipid is less compared to carbohydrate. But we need everything. We can't just avoid one food completely and take others. That is not balanced diet. Then your body will be suffering for some other things.
Okay. Obesity, diabetes in particular, one of the leading causes of death globally around the world. Obesity going through the roof, especially post-pandemic and as a result of, and then obviously the link to diabetes as a result. If you were president, you're president of the world, planet Earth, what would you do? What rules would you put in place, laws, to help curb this obesity and this diabetic pandemic?
I think I'll tell you, it's very difficult to motivate people, I know that, but we can do it in a way. We need to motivate people, and we also need to maybe create some policy if we can. I saw in some countries they tried and they're successful. And for example, many people, they like to eat outside. And many people, they want to buy healthy foods, but they don't know which one is healthy, which one is unhealthy. So if we can do the food labeling, especially when the food is going to the shelf, and if we can make the food labeling in South Africa and even other countries in the world, like if we can give the green code, so this food is good for health, and the orange code and red code to the food, and it will be every single food coming with one of the three color codes, not only in the shelf but also in the restaurant. When you're choosing a meal, it's coming with a red tag. You like it or not, it's a red tag, and another orange tag, another green tag. That is psychological. I think that can make a difference in all over the world to reduce the pandemic of obesity and diabetes. And that people will, some people even, they don't want to eat it, but they look at 3 times, hey, this is not good. This is red tag. So I think that kind of things we need to do globally.
I love that. You can call it the robot system.
Yes.
Red, yellow, or red, amber, and green. That makes perfect sense because it's raising awareness.
Yes.
As well, and it's constantly in your face.
Yes.
You might walk in and look at your pantry and think, oh, jeepers, there's all I see are red labels. No wonder I'm feeling bad, I'm lethargic, low energy levels, etc. Okay, so labeling, hey?
I think that can make a difference because you'll see in every single food. So food labeling, I think it's a color-coded food. And now we label for vegetarian or non-vegetarian or something. We put a green color code for vegetarian. But I think the green should be given for healthy food, and maybe orange for moderately healthy food, and maybe red for the unhealthy foods. I know that healthy foods are expensive, but still people will decide.
Yeah, that is the problem. Is that unhealthy foods can be made on scale,
yes,
and then therefore can be cheaper and more accessible to the public.
You can't teach nutrition to everyone, in one day. I think that way you can make a difference globally, because if every single food is coming with a label.
How would you grade those labels? What would be the criteria for you for determining a healthy food versus a medium versus an unhealthy, in your opinion?
I think you can easily say if a food you consider unhealthy, in that case if you're eating too much, for example, that type of food. So another food like green vegetable, I think colored vegetables, even if you're eating a lot, you will not get, so that kind of things. Because sometimes in nutrition we call it negative calorie food. So some foods you're eating, whatever amount of calorie you're getting from those foods, after metabolism, but ultimate loss of the calorie is higher than that. So for metabolism, we call them negative calorie food. So those food are definitely healthy. You need to think about that, particularly for those people, those who want to lose weight.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's negative calorie foods where, let's say, I'm making it up. So this might not be a negative calorie food, but let's say one's eating 100 grams of spinach. And that contains, for easy maths, 100 calories. I know that it's not, but 100 calories. What you're suggesting is then the body, to metabolize and process that, would burn 120 calories.
Of course.
So you'd be in a deficit then of 20.
You're losing 20 calories.
You're losing 20 calories
even
by
after
eating something.
Yes. How people lose weight by eating salad.
Very interesting.
Right. So that's how it works.
Okay.
Because metabolism, normally we need a lot of energy to complete the metabolism of anything.
Okay. Wrapping up shortly, somebody comes to you, they're diabetic. They ask you for 3 tips to turn their life around. What would those tips be?
I think eating healthy, living healthy, and normally I call 3D.
3D. Okay.
Diet, discipline, and drug.
Diet, discipline, and?
Drug or medicine.
Okay.
So if you can follow these 3 things, you'll be healthy, because people are living with diabetes for 50 years. Nothing happened, no complications. But some people, even after 10 years, getting complications and dying. And if I talk about maybe diabetic complications to you, and recently I got invitation from a big publisher to edit a book on diabetic complications. So that is another story. We got many different types of complications, like diabetic retinopathy, nephropathy, cardiomyopathy, neuropathy, and the common one now, the diabetic foot disease or skin ulcer. So these are the common diabetic complications, and almost every single person suffers from 2 or more diabetic complications.
Really?
Yeah, because if they don't manage their diabetes properly, and if somebody managing their diabetes properly, they will delay or get it very late, maybe before they die.
Okay.
So it depends. So that is, I'll tell you 3D, the diet, discipline, and drag. So people need to follow.
Nice. Prof, what's got you excited? What research are you up to at the moment, and what exciting things do you have in the future?
I think, as I told you, although our main area of research is diabetes, but we got diversified project, but all linked to diabetes. You will not find a single paper we publish, there's no keyword diabetes. And we are very focused researcher. And I tell my student all the time, and many times we get invitation from someone working on TB, it's very common in South Africa, or HIV or malaria, and they want to get involved us to their project, want to publish together. I said no. Why? Because we don't want to be, jack of all trades. We are not like that. We are the very focused researcher. We stick with our keywords. We only work on particular things, and we want to be globally recognized for that particular things. And I think by now we got some global recognition, as you know.
Yes.
As the editor-in-chief of the World Journal of Diabetes, and also globally I'm the top 2% researcher in my area of research. So in experimental diabetes research, my ranking is top 0.016%, I think, at the moment.
Outstanding.
So I think it's not good to say about myself a lot, but we are very focused researchers. So our research project at the moment, as I told you, our hotcake research is animal model development. And one of my master's students currently developing the animal model for diabetic complications. Many researchers develop a model for normal type 2 diabetes or normal type 1 diabetes, but very few of them, they found a model that can develop all complications or most of the complications. So we are running a project at the moment. We're trying to develop a model that can give most of the complications, and that can be the best model in the world for diabetic complications, the animal model. So we're also running that seaweed project, I think CLG project, running by another the two master students. One just completed cum laude, you saw that, and
yes.
Submitted 400-page thesis. And she become PhD now. She's doing PhD under the same project. Another MSc student also working on that project. Another two honors students recently finished their study on sweetener study. One working on artificial, another one on natural alternative sweetener. But you gave me some idea as well to compare. I think it will be interesting.
It would be.
Yeah. So which one exactly the superior?
Yeah.
Not best. This out of the natural or artificial. Yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
And this whole interview that we've done has been very interesting. So thank you very much for the time. Thank you for taking the time to come to chat to me. I've learned a lot, and I know that people are going to find this very informative. And the key, like you've alluded to with those 3 tips, is discipline. To apply what you've learned by listening to this episode. Be proactive in your approach if you're somebody that's diabetic and you're looking to take charge of your life. So, Prof, once again, thank you very much for being here.
I think before I close, I want to tell you last thing. Some people sometimes think maybe it is madness, but it works. So what is that? If you want to lose weight, check your weight every morning. That's it.
Check your weight every morning?
Every morning, not every week.
Okay. Why is that?
That is very important, because when you see even 100 gram you gain compared to yesterday, that will work on your head. When you're sitting on the lunch table, you will eat less. Because you gain 100 gram, you need to lose it. For last 10 years, my waist size is same. Why? You need to know how much you are. So if you don't know, the weight can grow quietly underneath, you don't know. So if you're gaining 2 kilograms, it's very difficult to bring it down. But if you're gaining 200 grams, it's easy to bring it down.
Okay.
So that is why it's very important to check your weight every morning.
To keep your finger on the pulse.
It doesn't cost you.
Fantastic.
No cost.
Thank you very much for being here.
Okay.
Absolute
thank you very
pleasure.
much. But I think I'm free to talk anytime if you need. But the one invitation I got recently from Malaysia to talk about the science communication, and I'm thinking to do something like that, because it's very important to give our research result to the public.
Yes.
Otherwise, we are doing research, but the people actually, the public, they're not getting benefit of it.
No.
So that is why it's very important to develop a culture of science communication. So what are the scientists doing? That must be going to the public, and they know what is good, what is bad, and that can make a difference in the society.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that's why you do what you do,
Yes.
to make a difference.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Prof, thank you. Wait. Before you go. Did you enjoy that episode as much as I did hosting it? Please go on to Apple Podcasts or to Spotify, rate the show, follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a comment and a review. Every little bit helps. The more reviews that the show gets, the more traction it's going to get, which means that the guests get better and better, the value gets better and better, and then we can continue to grow together and be better as a community. Thank you very much. Have a great day.